This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Good evening and welcome to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education business meeting and tenure recognition. To begin with, I'll call the meeting to order, which I just did. Next, I will ask for an approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Andrea,
Second.
seconded by Sue. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have an approval of minutes from May 24th.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second.
seconded by Esther. All those in favor? Aye. We have a long and busy and full meeting tonight. We're going to have a great time recognizing some tenure candidates, but just real briefly, I want to just have a moment about some transitions that we're going to be underway. In itself, getting tenure is a transition from a probationary teacher to a career, which is great. I wanted to make note that last week a bunch of us were able to celebrate with some teachers who were on the other side of that transition. They were retiring. And I tabulated this. There were 16 retirees with 363 years of experience that left us last week. Some outstanding people who did great things for our students. And I don't know that any of them are here, but they deserve a round of applause for their service. And parts of this table will be also undergoing a transition. Our student rep, which is Lila Munger, is not here tonight because she's at her track and field banquet. She has a bunch of things going on, and we told her that the track and field banquet was likely more important. And she will be replaced by a young woman named Eliza Gahouse, who's not able to be here because she's asymptomatic for COVID. So this is 2022. This is how we roll. We look forward to meeting Eliza. In an abstention, we give Lila a round of applause for just doing a great job. Very upbeat and a great night. I do want to pass along one sad thing. The woman that was Nicole Urellis' predecessor was a woman named Beth Jacqueline. She passed away recently, had a long, tough battle with cancer. She was out at this table for a number of years, always just did a phenomenal job of talking about the BTA and everything that they did. A few of us were able to be at a celebration of her life last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget now. Her husband and kids just did a fantastic job. We'll miss Beth. Nicole, you do a great job and you are a worthy successor to Beth, but we'll always keep her family in our thoughts and prayers in that regard. This is kind of sad for us on the board. This will be Andrea Costanza's last board meeting. After over a decade of service to this community, those of us who have sat on the board with Andrea know her to be compassionate, empathetic, a great listener. She has the right sense of humor to be a board member. And she has an uncanny ability to ask difficult questions of the board, which helps us be better. And she served this district for over a decade. And besides being on the board in some various subcommittees, Julene can tell you she also did some, I want to say, some other fun things like saying yes to the dress and doing some of the things around Brighton, your wardrobe, that help students in ways that aren't always up front and center. So we have a plaque for her, but I would ask that you all give Andrea a round of applause, please. Andrea's going to get to travel a little bit more. Her and her husband have a camper and go and harass their kids who aren't in town anymore. And I do want to thank, we only do this, able to do it once a year, but I'm going to ask Ian and Mike in the back room and Bill to come and stand in front of me, please, for just a second. The cameras will run for just a moment. I'll ask you three to come on up here for a second, please.
Will we get that guy out of the back room?
Get him out, Nate. I'm not, get him out. Yeah. Come on, Mike.
Mike, we know you can hear us, Mike.
No, guys, I need you to come and stand in front of me. It'll block the view of me, which is good.
We're off the air right now.
No.
Hey, Mike, can you see that sign up there?
I need you guys to back up and face the audience, please. Raise, and I say your, Ian, say hi. Mike, say hi. Bill, say hi. These are the people behind the camera all the time that allow us to stream and have this out for everybody. They do this job all year. But speaking of transitions, Ian will be moving to New York City, or someone said the Jersey Shore, I don't know, to go work for Amazon. So we're losing Ian, but these three have done a stellar job for us this year, getting our message out, making sure people have access and visibility, and what we do has transparency. So I'd ask a round of applause for them as well. Thank you guys very much. Ian, we're going to look for you on Jersey Shore. Last thing I'd say, and I always forget to do this before school starts to break, every meeting, we have fantastic, beautiful, wonderful art behind us, except this meeting. We get all of the art teachers, paintings, portraits, photographs, and things like that, and it brings a smile to us as we walk in here, so very, very grateful for that. Okay, long meeting tonight. Let's get to another fun part of that, which is the transition from probationary teacher to tenured teacher. So I think Julie and I will go up and take some things up there, and you get to speak.
So, one thing, just if you call the motion first, so we'll do the approval first and then we'll hand out the certificates. I'm sorry.
So doing the motion, that's okay?
Yeah.
That's okay. We got to do this officially, because this is important.
So if you call the motion first and then any discussion is this, and then they come back, because we're still recommending, and then we come back and they vote after you come back down.
Okay. Motion to approve the list of candidates here on your agendas for tenure tonight.
So moved.
Moved by Julene,
Second?
seconded by Sue. Questions, discussions, comments? No,
Looking
well,
forward to hearing all of their accomplishments.
Right, so we'll do that, and then you can take the vote when you come back down after you hear
Okay.
about how fantastic they are.
perfect. No, thank you.
So I would just ask the tenure recipient, when I call your name, if you could come up and stand next to Mrs. Gilbert and Mr. Davis, and then they have a tenure certificate for you. So first up, Jessica Cordova, if you could come on up. Give a round of applause, please. Jessica Cordova has a bachelor's degree from the I just really want to say that, the University of Miami, a master's degree from Brooklyn College in early childhood education, and a professional certificate, childhood education, grades 1 through 6 in early childhood education, and has taught in both the Rochester City Schools, the Discovery Charter School, and then at French Road Elementary School. She is noted by Mrs. Jeffries as a strong teacher who sets high expectations for all students as she seeks to know each one individually and finds out what works best for them. Jessica's ability to break down information and difficult concepts for students is natural. Jessica is also an incredibly supportive colleague and team member. She's willing to make herself available for others and will work with fellow teachers to support the demands of planning and acclimating to a new building. She was also a leader on our Black History Month Planning Committee. She strives to make sure our students have high-quality experiences at FRES that continually stretch their thinking. Jessica thoughtfully connects with families and caregivers. She completes her probationary period, demonstrating an excellence in teaching. Her expertise and dedication to her profession are all a part of this excellence. For this and so many more reasons, we are so excited to recommend her for tenure this evening. Congratulations, Jessica. Christopher Dozier. Christopher has a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics from the University of Rochester, a bachelor's in saxophone performance and music education from the Eastman School of Music, and a master's degree in childhood education from the University of Rochester, certifications in music and childhood education, and teaching experience at French Road, also a team leader at French Road for special areas throughout this past year. Chris is an instrumental music educator who goes above and beyond on a regular basis to ensure success for the students in his class. He can be found at French Road at all hours, early or late, working directly with students or preparing for the next band performance. Chris's commitment to students is unparalleled, as he will take extra measures to not only make sure they enjoy learning how to play an instrument, but also that they develop a true appreciation for music and the positive impact it can have on their lives. In lessons, Chris makes many adjustments and adaptations to make sure all students feel like they can learn an instrument or join the school band. Chris is also the special area team leader. As I mentioned, he dedicates extra time and effort to supporting his colleagues. His clear communication, organization, and solution-focused attitude make him a pleasure to work with. He also demonstrates excellence in teaching, expertise, and dedication. For this and so many more reasons, we are so excited to recommend him for tenure this evening. Congratulations. Katie Drake. Katie has a bachelor's degree in childhood and special education from SUNY Geneseo and a master's in special education from Roberts Wesleyan College, professional certifications in childhood education and students with disabilities. She has experience not only at French Road Elementary School, but also Red Creek Schools, Wayne Central Schools, and the Mary Cariola Children's Center. Katie is an educator who goes above and beyond on a regular basis to ensure success for the students that she works with, writes Mrs. Jeffries. In addition to the consultant teacher role she currently holds, Katie also has spent time as a 1214 teacher in our special education program. Katie goes the extra mile to connect with students and families. She learns what makes each student tick and can provide an environment where they feel confident to take risks in the learning environment. The trust Katie builds with students helps them find success in novel tasks and improve their skills over time. Caitlin O'Neill, assistant principal at French Road, shared, Katie is a hard-working special educator. She is data-driven and able to modify and accommodate for student needs. She is a valuable member of the Committee on Special Education as she is articulate and has a rich knowledge of her students. Katie is organized and diligent. She creates pathways for students to succeed by drilling down specifically to each child's individualized goals. Katie goes to great lengths to tailor student assessments and classwork to their needs. She empowers students to feel confident in the new skills they build and supports their application in novel tasks. She, too, ends her probationary period demonstrating excellence in teaching, passion, and dedication to her profession. For this and so many more reasons, we are so excited to recommend her for tenure this evening. Shannon Dugan. Shannon has a bachelor's degree in English from Washington and Jefferson College and a master's in secondary English and special education from SUNY College of Brockport. Certifications in English Language Arts 7 through 12 and Students with Disabilities 7 through 12. Her teaching experience includes 12 Corners Middle School, both as a 7th grade English part-time teacher and a full-time probationary teacher. She's also been the yearbook advisor at 12 Corners, which in and of itself should earn somebody tenure. An English teacher, Shannon has proven to be a positive addition to the 7th grade English team as well as 12 Corners Middle School community. She has grown into an educator who demonstrates a respectable understanding of middle school students. She has established a classroom environment with predictable routines, freeing students up to apply cognitive effort to the literary skills and concepts they are learning. Whenever I visit her room, writes Mrs. Edmonds, students clearly know what is expected of them and feel safe taking academic risks. One of her greatest strengths is that Shannon can predict where students will need additional scaffolding. She works diligently to prepare lessons accordingly. She's engaged in UBD curriculum work with her colleagues each summer and is engaged in learning opportunities related to equity and diversity, restorative practices, and critical literacy. Her role as member of Curriculum Council for the 3 years allowed her to dig more deeply into each of these areas and share learning with her colleagues. When asked to take on roles as a lead proctor and scorer for New York State assessments, she did not hesitate. Shannon is a caring individual who works hard in the best interest of her students. She is intellectually curious and holds great passion for her subject area. Throughout her time at TCMS, Shannon has demonstrated flexibility and a sense of humor. Her colleagues, students, families find her to be one they enjoy being around. She's demonstrated excellence in teaching and professionalism. For this and so many reasons, we recommend her for tenure this evening. Robert Giles. Robert has a degree in English literature from SUNY Geneseo and adolescent English education from University at Buffalo. Professional certification in English language arts 7 through 12, and experience in the Bolivar-Richburg Central School District, Penfield Central Schools before coming to 12 Corners Middle School. A secondary English teacher at 12 Corners Middle School. He has taught 7th through 8th grade English, as we mentioned, prior to coming to the district. He has demonstrated that he's a teacher who fully understands young adolescents and their needs. He maintains a classroom environment that is both structured and predictable for students, yet flexible enough to support the various learning needs of each child he teaches. He leverages a variety of media to develop lessons that are engaging and frequently incorporates opportunities for student voice and choice in his classes. Rob is also a tremendous collaborator. He works well with his special education and ESL colleagues to prepare lessons that instruct and assess students in a developmentally appropriate manner. He also works very well with his English colleagues, writes Mrs. Edmonds, throughout the school year and in annual UBD curricular institutes to develop differentiated units that challenge his students. He collaborates with counselors and families to proactively communicate concerns and brainstorm necessary supports for students. He's a flexible thinker with a great sense of humor. He is rarely flustered, demonstrates a genuine interest in his students' lives outside school, and provides an environment in which students always seem to be enjoying themselves as they learn and grow as students of English. He has demonstrated excellence in teaching and professionalism. For this and many reasons, we recommend him for tenure this evening. Robin Newcomer. Robin has a bachelor's degree in French and secondary education from SUNY Fredonia and a master's in arts and liberal studies from SUNY Brockport. Certification in French 7 through 12 and teaching experience at Our Lady of Mount Carmel School and the Newark Central Schools before coming to 12 Corners Middle School. She's also been the French trip advisor, another duty that automatically grants you tenure. Anybody who goes on a trip. She, as mentioned, she taught for 20 years at Newark before coming to us, and her passion for teaching and dedication to TCMS have been a tremendous asset to the school building, writes Mrs. Edmonds. She goes on to say that Robin's dedication to teaching is evident in all aspects of her day, be it through individual interactions with students, meetings with families, or the lessons that she delivers each period. Robin has an energy that is uplifting and contagious. She has a solid understanding of teaching a world language at the middle school level, and her approach to differentiating lessons for students of varying abilities is impressive. Each time that I enter, writes Mrs. Edmonds, Robin's classroom, students are actively engaged in learning the language. She presents the language and culture through numerous modes, encouraging students to read, write, listen, and speak the language through an inquiry-based and hands-on approach. Students feel safe taking educational risks in Robin's classroom. She's involved in many aspects of the TCMS community beyond her classroom. She's a strong collaborator with the entire World Language Department at TCMS. She has also served as a member of Curriculum Council, program evaluation teams, and other building-specific committees. She leads activities at Outdoor Ed and organizes the 8th grade French class trip to Quebec as mentioned. She's embedded herself in all aspects of the TCMS community in the most positive of ways. She's demonstrated excellence in teaching and professionalism. For this and many reasons, we recommend her for tenure. Maria Sanchez Martinez. Is Nico's mom, first of all, I should point out. Clearly raised an outstanding young man. A bachelor's degree in liberal arts from CUNY City College of New York, a master's in English, also from City University of New York, City College of New York, master's in education from CUNY City College of New York, and a master's in TESOL from the University of Rochester. Professional certification in English to speakers of other languages. She worked as a program specialist at the 1199 SEIU Training Fund and the Benefits Fund as a conference center coordinator before coming to 12 Corners Middle School beginning in 2017. Maria, again, an ESL teacher in our school district, has demonstrated dedication to TCMS and been a valuable asset to the district in so many ways. Her ability to develop and nurture relationships with students, staff, and families has proven to be one of her greatest strengths as an educator. She prides herself on creating classroom spaces and communities where students feel safe, welcome, represented, and included. In her standalone and push-in sections, Maria builds personal connections with students so that she can design and implement services that best serve them. She also works closely with families, some of whom are new to the country, to gain an understanding of their strengths and needs so she can be proactive in advocating for and developing programs that set them up for success. Maria is adept at tailoring instruction to the individual needs of her students with a strong focus on reading and language acquisition. She's a phenomenal collaborator, worked closely with the 2 other SL teachers at TCMS to develop and modify lessons for all students in their program. Her philosophy is that students in the TCMS ENL program do not belong to just one teacher. The 3 are continually thinking out of the box to address the needs of all. She works closely with classroom teachers to identify and meet the needs of students as well, thereby demonstrating her commitment to the success of all students in our TCMS community. She's an incredibly dedicated teacher at TCMS, to her department, and to her students. She has a let's get it done and we'll do what it takes attitude that is difficult to match. For her ability to pose for Brian's pictures, for her professionalism, excellence in teaching, and being all around fantastic, we congratulate you and recommend you for tenure this evening.
Is that it? Kevin, is that it?
One more.
Okay.
Patrick Tigoy. Patrick has a bachelor's degree in English from SUNY Buffalo, level 2 teaching assistant certification, and has been a teaching assistant both at Project Grow through St. John Fisher and at Brighton High School. As a teaching assistant in our program supporting Brighton students, 18 to 21-year-old students, Patrick has assisted in the development of student independence, job place readiness, and interpersonal skills. He's been a vital and integral part of Project Grow team since the program first began. While always supporting the entire class, Patrick often works with individual students with each of their specific routines and differentiated tasks for the day. This includes in the classroom, workplace, or navigating various community experiences. Patrick gently provides students with direct feedback in a coaching fashion, prompting where needed, and stepping back to ensure that a student attempts a goal with the greatest amount of independence. He has developed a strong rapport with students, staff, and families. Patrick balances knowing when to allow a student to work through a problem, including dealing with expected struggles, and when to jump in and assist. He treats each student with kindness and, most importantly, with dignity as a productive member in the class and community. It is with great pleasure that he is recommended for tenure for his professionalism and dedication to each one of his children and his profession. Congratulations. While Mr. Davis and Mrs. Gilbert are returning to their seat, I just want to say a couple of things very quickly. One, to all of the family members that are here, thank you. Because this doesn't happen, we recognize the impact to our kids doesn't happen to as great an extent and as deeply and richly unless you are giving up something. You're giving up a piece of that person to us and to our children. So thank you for sharing them with us, being patient in that, and in that way contributing to what happens for each one of our kids. We realize the impact that that has on people's families. To the kids here, thanks for sharing your family members with us too, because we realize they have to share a little bit of their love and their care and concern with the kids in front of them, and we appreciate you giving up a little bit of that so that other kids can experience it too. They're pretty lucky. I also would like to say thank you to each of the individual people receiving tenure tonight in a little bit of a different way and say to you that when I look at you and I hear about your experiences, I think about when we first met and in your final interview, and I asked you in your last question, why should we trust you with our children? I asked you that as a dad. Some of you have specifically had the opportunity to the opportunity, the gift, as Rob Giles was talking about in his first year, to find out that he was teaching one of my kids. And really, I say to you that for not one moment, not 1 second, would we regret the choice that we made after asking you that question. The very most important question that we can possibly ask as parents, to share the centers of our universe with you, the people that are most important to us in our lives with you, especially when it involves their favorite child being with any one of you, which I said to every one of you, right? And you have done that miraculously and treated our children as if they were your own, with a tremendous amount of love and care and concern. And we both appreciate that, but tonight is a recognition of our commitment to you for a lifetime of you doing that. And we appreciate that you are willing to commit to our children and our families going forward, to continue to treat them like they are your own. So thank you for that, and congratulations. One more round of applause for each of you.
Before I call for a vote, I'll add one quick comment, which is I noted that we had 16 teachers retire that had 360-something years of experience. And when you lose that much experience, the only way to backfill it, to replace it, is with people of the caliber we talked about tonight. So I'm very grateful that we're able to replenish that pool of greatness for the kids. And it's just wonderful to hear everyone's background and the reports from the principals in regards to their contribution. So it's great. We will now call for a motion to approve tenure for the individuals we just learned about.
So moved.
Moved by Andrea,
Second.
seconded by Christina. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Now, we have a number of reports to go over for the next hour plus. It's also been reported that we have a small problem in which room is it?
The staff development room right out to the left that some of you may have already been in.
We're great proponents of sustainability and things like that, and there are cookies and treats that will go to waste if they are not eaten. So if you need to get kids home or get home to watch kids or do other things, now is probably a good time. You're welcome to stay and listen to the multiple reports we will be hearing, but it might be a good time to slip out and help us with the food waste. It's out the door to the left. Thank you again and congratulations. We'll wait for just a minute for the room to clear.
Oh, Kristen was there.
Okay.
Here we are.
As always, in our public meetings, we have the opportunity for public participation. Is there any member of the public who would like to provide comments or feedback or questions? Principal Tappan, anything to say? You good? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Now we're going to hear blueprint updates. I don't know what order we're going in.
Excuse me.
Allison?
I thought you were like,
No.
you were being funny. thought you were being coy.
All right, so tenure, babies, and now blueprint updates.
Strong finish, Dr. Rio.
Way to own it, way to own it.
Oh, that was so nice. And we are really happy to be here giving these updates tonight because it's an opportunity for us to reflect on all the work that we've done over the course of the school year as a school district, as a community, administrators, teachers, students, everyone involved. And as much as I joke, it does feel good to look back and reflect on the great work that's happened across the school year. So again, just as a reminder, these are our Brighton Blueprint areas that we focused on this year: academic rigor for all, systems and DEI, mental health and wellness, and you'll hear from me, and then you'll hear from Lou Limo and Deanna Spagnola as well as they give updates on their sections. So this was our focus for academic rigor for all this year, thinking about making sure that all of our students were given the opportunity to maximize their potential based on their needs and interest, and we had a strong focus on being culturally responsive and celebrating and accepting differences. And we supported this by developing a growth mindset for all, which we'll touch upon as we get into our updates here. So one of our big pieces this school year was moving into our school-based equity teams, moving away from our district larger diversity committee and breaking it down into individual school committees. So we've created a school-based committee at each of the 4 school buildings that is comprised of administrators and teachers and faculty, students when applicable at the middle school and high school, parents, Board of Education members, some of you sitting right here, and our recenter partners. So we had quite a mix of people. It was our first year kicking this off, and as with any first year, we kind of had to build some community and get to know each other and kind of set the framework for the work moving forward. So a lot of our work this year focused on using a rubric that was developed through the culturally responsive and sustaining framework to start to assess things like school climate, culture, curriculum, and connections. And all of the school buildings got into that to some degree. Some got a little bit further along in the rubric than others, but it was a start of kind of assessing where we are, taking status quo as we're moving forward into the next school year. We wrapped up our last meeting just last month in May with an amazing student panel with students from the middle school and the high school who shared their experiences in relation to the work that's going on around the district in equity and diversity. So questions included things as such as a time when they didn't feel seen or heard, a time when they did feel seen or heard, and one thing adults should know better to serve our students. And their answers were extremely powerful. I know some of us in this room were part of that panel, had the opportunity to listen, and that will definitely help to continue to drive the work that we're doing in the district around equity. This summer, we're going to get back together with our school-based equity teams, and we'll have a chance to review the culture and climate data from the Panorama surveys that were administered to all staff and parents and students in the district. And we'll also look at that narrative from the student panel to kind of give us some more input, that qualitative piece of just listening to people's experiences and their personal thoughts around the work that we're doing. Next year, we're really looking forward to continuing this work and diving a bit more deeply into the work with a co-facilitator from each school building. So a teacher or counselor who will be leading the way along with the principal and really getting into that individualized school data that we'll start looking at in August. So continuing our work and lots of exciting plans moving forward. We also took a big dive into habits of mind. Not quite as big as Council Rock because they are pretty outstanding, but they were really helpful in guiding our way this year on Curriculum Council. So Principal Matt Tappan and a lot of our Council Rock teachers helped to kick off the year for us to share the work that's been done at Council Rock with all of the other school buildings and to bring about ideas for how to move this forward. So our goal is that as we move into next year, we have habits of mind represented in all the other 3 buildings in some way, and each building has a plan of how that will look as they roll out habits of mind to their students or integrate it into things that are already going on. We had some guest presenters from the Institute for Habits of Mind and lots of time to learn and plan together and building teams. So that will again continue into next year, but we have a great framework for where we're going, and thankful for everyone on Curriculum Council who was part of that work as well. And then part of our blueprint this year was to build opportunities to learn for families. So some of the feedback we heard in the past was families want to hear more about the work that we're doing. So we built in some purposeful times for families to be part of this work. As I already mentioned, the involvement on our school-based equity team. So we had parents on each one of our 4 building committees, and we'll look for more parents if interested next year and family members. And we had several different presentation options throughout the school year. So each building had a PTSA meeting where they shared all of the diversity, equity, and inclusion updates. So actually there was one for K-5 and one for 6-12 in March. And then the principals and myself presented to the Families of Students of Color group in May. So opportunities whenever we can to share the work that's going on. And again, when you get to look at it all in one place, it is pretty impressive. So we'll continue that as we move into next year too. And then part of our blueprint was thinking about coming back to school 5 days in person, which seems like an eternity ago when we wrote this goal, and we've been through a whole year, which is amazing. But some of the things that we looked at adding were the intervention teachers in reading and math at French Road and the middle school and the high school to give additional support to students. And those faculty members have been incredibly helpful in targeting needs for kids in small groups or sometimes one-on-one, and just being able to allow us the opportunity to give more supports to students, in that intervention piece, especially in math, although we have ramped up reading a bit too. We also have math instructional leaders at the K-5 level and at the 6-12 level, as I've mentioned before, Stefana Monachino and Andrea Doyle, and they have really helped us to think about the targeted interventions that we need. Andrea has done a phenomenal job looking at academic intervention data at the 6 through 8 level, and they've helped us focus in on the work that needs to get done to fill the gaps for kids in some of that missing instruction. And then we've reviewed the needs along the way of how to best support students, and we've put a couple of math interventions into place. And we've seen some great successes at Council Rock for a number of worlds, and iReady for our middle school and some high school students, using that as an intervention. And again, access to 24/7 tutoring support, VFF Tutor. We had many students access that for any need throughout the school year, whether it's homework or test prep or a quick question, kids could log on, and we will likely continue that next year as well. So a big piece that's ongoing, and I don't know when we'll ever say we've arrived. I think this is a forever ongoing goal for us to continue to adapt and revise curriculum to support teaching and learning within the culturally responsive and sustaining education framework. What we have done is taken a review of all of the curriculum that we've adapted over the past few years and tried to map out where we've made real specific changes around culturally responsive education. And then as we moved into our Summer Institute this year, we have trying to think off the top of my head, we have dozens and dozens of teachers signed up. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but signed up to write curriculum this summer. And we will continue to have that focus of looking at the lens of individualized learning for students, student agency, and really tapping into some of those culturally responsive pieces that our teachers have been learning about. We've also started this year a book review process to evaluate the texts that are used as common texts. So the books that all the kids read in the classroom and supporting texts as well, to make sure that we're not just reading books around the same topic, that we're differentiating the types of books we read, but also to make sure we're giving kids experiences that are varied and not just the traditional texts that we've always had for so long. And last update from me, before I pass it over to Lou, is just an update about our makerspace, and this will carry over a bit into Lou's section as well, and it wasn't necessarily in my blueprint section, but it's really been a big piece of our work this year, because it does tie into the academic rigor for all. A makerspace, and I put a definition here just for everybody to kind of ground themselves in case you don't know what it is, but it's really a space where students can come to, or adults, with an idea and leave with a project. So it's intended for them to come to collaborate, to build, to explore, to create things, and really take their learning to a new level and really learn about things that they're interested in. So Council Rock has created a beautiful makerspace as part of the library. The classroom at the back of the library. French Road has a classroom, a work in progress this year. We're working on the middle school, and the high school has the lower level library, which has the makerspace that some of us have visited together. These makerspaces are fantastic, looking beautiful, and now we're moving to the next stage of really visioning what this looks like for the district. So what do we want to see across K-12? And this summer, our makerspace team is going to meet along with administrators and teachers from each school building to really decide what does this look like and how our space is going to be used in each building. All right, questions? Thanks. I'm going to pass it over to Lou. Thanks, Lou.
Good evening. So from the systems in diversity, equity, and inclusion, we continued the work with our hiring practices. So we looked at recruitment, retention, and environment. Along the environment ends, we really deferred to the establishment of the school-based equity teams. So the work of the hiring practices more focused on the recruitment side, and I'll go into that a little bit. And the health and well-being of faculty, staff, and students, that work centered on the evaluation and the re-review of school start times. And then alternative learning environments, we've talked to that in the past. Allison's taken the lead on looking at the maker spaces, and we're be working in our upcoming building condition survey in furtherance of that work. So going into our hiring practices, again, we focused on the recruitment pillar within our scope of work. Really proud of what we were able to accomplish this year. I'm very proud to work with a committed group of parents, faculty members, administrators, new Board of Education members that have joined the team. And it's been a team that's been growing over the last 3 years. And this year we continue to make improvements to our processes. So this year we, partnering with Recenter and Renee Baker as our consultants, we revised and bolstered our committee training. Expanded to a 45-minute training, and we're building capacity in that we want to have trained committee members that can serve on any committee. So it's not just here, watch a YouTube video where we started, let's reflect and minimize the biases that we bring to the hiring practices and to the interview setting, but intense training and refresher training, whereas there can be essentially vetted and qualified committee members that will serve and be objective in our hiring practices and serve on our committees. The reengineering of how the committees interviewed was probably the focal point of our work this year. We always started with a rubric of some sorts, but this year we re-engineered it starting with professionally pre-vetted rubrics. So for administrative interviews, we use the Marshall rubric. We use the NICET rubric. And from there, looking at the definitions of highly effective and going backwards, we designed questions based on the rubric. So we re-engineered everything in mind so people are listening for evidence, and that's what we're inviting throughout the course of the process. Tell us, provide us evidence of how you will do something. What will we expect to hear or see? So everyone had a fair shot in presenting their scope of experiences and what they brought to the table. One of the important parts of it is we added in all of our teacher interviews and administrator interviews a part on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can see what was prompted in that portion of the interview that really allowed the committee members to hear from the person directly, what will it look like? How will you make us better in this work, and what can we expect of you? So I think it was really good improvements, and again, we'll evaluate it at the end of this hiring season and continue to make improvements going forward. So where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time is summarizing the work of the 2021 school start time committees. So where I want to start is why. Why were we engaged in that work? Well, we were engaged to be responsive to parents' concerns and the presentation of science that suggests and shows that later start times are beneficial for our kids. What we didn't study the science. That was never a point of contention. What we wanted to do was be responsive to that, we see the science, and some of our parent representatives presented this slide. They actually prepared this slide to show why this isn't such an important topic for our community. And we started right with, all right, if that's the case, we're going to say that's the case, what would the operational impact be? How might we achieve that from an operations standpoint? So that's where I stepped in and said, all right, how might we achieve that if we wanted to start school start times at 8:30 or later? So we built on the work from 2016 and 17, where we presented to the community different scenarios. Some were cost neutral, some had a cost impact, and we reviewed all the data and the feedback from 2016-17, and we agreed on a starting point of this scenario that's outlined on this slide, where we would achieve the AMA recommendation of starting at 8:30 or thereabouts, or at least an hour later from where we were, and we tried to factor in all the other parameters in the operational structure. So from that, we adopted a scenario that we wanted to continue to vet this year. And one of the miscalculations that we had in 2016-17 was the transportation impact. We thought we could start, not impact the starting time at Council Rock. But when we looked at the transportation impact, we realized to minimize the cost impact, we would need to bump Council Rock earlier than what was presented in 2016 and 17. So that was a pretty significant, what turned out to be a pretty significant difference from the 2016-17. But the scenario that the group adopted and we wanted to present to the committee, or to the community rather, were these start times. And these are the key elements of what we wanted to present to the community and get feedback from. So both made the AMA and the AAP recommendations of starting no earlier than 8:30. What we said and what we learned from the first year, for the 2016, that we would absolutely need to maintain at least 30 minutes of time after school for extra help, clubs, and activities. That was very important to our high school community. We did need to change the start time for Council Rock from a logistical standpoint. And then we tried to quantify what the impact was going to be, an additional demand for buses. So we identified 5 additional buses in the morning and 10 additional buses in the afternoon, and then we estimated the cost implications of that, and recognizing that there's aidability after that. So this is the scenario that we chose, that we thought had the most traction from 2016-17, that we wanted to represent to the community, hear what the feedback was, and then devise strategies on how to mitigate any of the concerns that we might hear. So we did a thought exchange, and we identified 8 different participation groups. So we had students, we had faculty members at each of the building, and we had parent groups. Over 1,944 participants, over 2,000 thoughts were reviewed. One of the tools within Thought Exchange is the differences. And we thought, as we were looking at the data, this is a good snapshot of really where the different stakeholder groups were on this issue. So the first one that we looked at was high school and middle school families. And so generally there was 8 differences. And I'm sharing this to kind of give you a sense of the temperature in each of the groups. So on one side, we had 311, and the other side, side B, was 135. So side A, our older students need later start times. Healthier teens make happier teens. Very well, seems majority of the parents that participated in that agreed with that. There were some concerns though. Please no, do not do this. Please do not do this. I would rather the money spending are in different areas. So that was the other side of it. So we saw a little bit of a weighting in that regard. When we looked at the students and recent graduates, there was 7 differences, but differently. 81 on side A, I hate it. I like it a lot. In the winter, it will be dark. When we get out, sports will start much later. Everyone is going to go crazy. Don't do this. So that was 81. Side B, I really think that this would impact us students very well. And that was one side. So 80 to 42. The next stakeholder group at the secondary level was faculty members. So middle school and high school faculty members. 67 to 27, side A. Let's keep our times as they are. We're all used to it and would impact sports and childcare. Side B, I think it's a great idea. So less supportive of the idea from our faculty. Council Rock stakeholders. Council Rock and preschool families. 68 on side A, 40 on side B. Side A, I don't like anything about it starting earlier and ending, only hurts working parents who have young kids that need to be cared for. Side B, I agree, the older kids should start later, they need their sleep. So you can see the relative weightings within Council Rock families. Some of the comments, though, when you dig into the most rated comments, unless the districts do the same with their younger population starting earlier, this throws a major wrench into childcare. So a lot of concerns with Council Rock with starting earlier in the end or earlier end date. The second most popular comment is pretty early for our youngest students and their parents as far as getting out and the door on time for the day. I'm sorry, that was from Council Rock faculty comments. So that was the 2 most frequent comments or highly rated comments from our faculty. So there wasn't any differences within the faculty, so I just decided to show the top thoughts within that particular group. When the FRES stakeholders, FRES family, 7 differences, 61 to 22, side A. I like that these new start times are more developmentally appropriate. Side B, the current start and end times are fine. The cost of this change is wasteful. So again, more supportive of the start time from FRES families who would be moving towards the secondary schools. And then our community, 20 on one side, 15 on the other. Side A, I don't care any of the start time. I care about more taxes. Side B, BHS students need to start at a later time. The later, the better. So you can see some divide within the community feedback as well. So when we dug into this data and we looked at the differences and we reviewed all the comments, we tried to, and we created a chart of the themes of the concerns and then the strategies that might mitigate those concerns. So when we heard and looked at all the comments from our students, these are the themes of the concerns: starting of sports and pushing activities later in the evening, the length of the school day, inability to participate in clubs and sports with school ending later, and getting all the work done. Homework was a common theme in there. We heard that. So as a group in our work, we developed what would be some of the strategies. If we wanted to address our student population, these are some things that we might consider further exploration in or some different strategies. So clear explanation of when activities will start and stop. Presentation of actual data. Give them an actual schedule. So further vet the plan to provide more detail to try to build some comfort. The district present the science and data from previous studies. So the idea was build buy-in by additional presentation of the science and build up more conversation about it. The third one is where we got stuck a little bit. Explore ways that may shorten the school day with little consequence to academic program or contractual time for teachers. Review the high school schedule and length of the day and explore trade-off of student-teacher contact time versus the advantages of additional sleep opportunities. So I say that very transparently where we got stuck, because that was outside our scope and the parameters that we started the work with in 2016 and 17, and the parameters that we started the work with in 2020, 21, 22. But it is a strategy that if we wanted to continue this discussion, something that the committee thinks we need to look at or charge a different committee to review. Going along the lines, again, faculty, BHS, what would be some of the strategies? Again, more presentation of the science, build more buy-in, allow for planning and implementation. So provide, set the time and then allow time and allow our faculty and staff to plan accordingly. And then build buy-in from the regional community, school communities, that Brighton wouldn't be penalized for the adoption of an earlier start time. If the length of the school day didn't change, or just support that, Brighton would still be included in athletic events and all different events. The families, what we heard in the loudest theme was childcare and impact on childcare, and the thought that earlier start times would be harmful to our younger children. So again, some of the strategies that we identified, childcare supported at school. One of the things that we did through the course of the year is we had at length discussion with Webster, and we learned how they developed their own childcare program and after-school program and subsidized childcare to assist families in that. Again, presentation of the science and sleep patterns and how those impact the younger children, and that the perception that it may be harmful to younger children. Try to address that with science and studies. And then additional survey of what needs. So let's go back to our Council Rock and our preschool families and say, what would it take if we wanted to do this? What else could the district do to help support or to minimize the consequence of such a structural change? So those are just some of the strategies. You can kind of read the rest. But as I said before, and again, where we're stuck in the scope that we were charged is bolded here, and that's something where we would need Board of Education and superintendent feedback, because that seems to be the real, from a community perception standpoint, moving in later into the school day is the most troublesome concern, is the thought that everything is going to be pushed back later into the evenings, and if we could offset that by shortening the school day, again, it was kind of divisive, but they thought that would be an adequate mitigation strategy specific to school start time. Outside of our scope, but a point for further discussion. So in summary, As we saw in the data, and very clearly saw in the data, that start times are perceived to be a divisive issue in the school community. Many people are for it, feel very strongly about it. Others are concerned about the consequences that it may have. The length of the school day, changes to established before and after school structures for families and faculty, and cost appear to be significant barriers. I didn't get much into the cost, but a lot of the feedback from the community and from families did address the costs, and spending more money on transportation wasn't well received. There was a debate on where that money could be spent that may add greater value to our students' well-being. The parents in favor of the change and starting times have asked the question, an important question: can we as a community handle some short-term inconveniences, frustrations, and cost to end the harm, visible or not, that our older kids may be experiencing? So that's kind of our stopping point right now, where we need a little bit more direction and to identify what the next steps could be.
I think, first of all, thank you, Lou. You've done a really great job of detailing this project, which is a pretty significant undertaking over the past year, but has been for several years, something we've talked about, and you work really closely with several, both staff members, but community members, to dig into this a lot further and understand the issue. Go out and ask people about the issue, study both the science, but also the practical implications here in terms of instructional time and cost. And so just thinking about the results and the next steps that you summarized on the screen, I think it's really important to iterate a couple of points here. One, that the science that's been presented around the impact on kids is not something we've disputed from the beginning of this conversation. That certainly sleep patterns, and any of us, and there's a bunch of us at the table at this point with kids at that age level, recognize that their sleep patterns are very different. And they wake up at a different point in time, and they go to bed certainly a different time, and they need a different amount of sleep. We recognize that. I think what's interesting is we have yet to really see longitudinal studies of schools that have shifted their start time, that have shown an improvement to particular outcomes, and that would be something interesting to see over time, number one. And that's a personal opinion, but one that I'd like to point out, including results of the one local district in Webster in particular, to really understand what kind of impact that has had. I guess the challenge is there are a lot of things that we know as individuals would be healthier. I should not have had the brownie that I had in the middle of the day today, right? And I don't want to equate like a big issue for a lot of people to me choosing a brownie, but my point is there are lots of things we could do that might be healthier, might be better, but we think about the cost benefit of those when we think about particular choices and how they impact other people, because they are significant impacts on other folks. We can always make a lot of healthy choices. We could be investing in organic food in the food service area that would price out our lunches for many people. There are lots of different things we could be looking at differently, and it's a question of how do you spend those resources, right? So on the science part of it, that wasn't a dispute, it hasn't been. What we're concerned about, I think, in that first bullet is a significant division in how people feel about this issue. And we saw this even when the Thought Exchange first went out, there was a lot of social media traffic around, I can't believe they're going to do this, right? People not necessarily perceiving or understanding or seeing that we were actually simply asking the question to study it at this point, but people who really thought that we were going ahead and doing it, which we weren't, we were just asking about it. And a pretty significant uproar that, gosh, that would be terrible, I don't like that, that would be a problem, mostly on the elementary level, that this would cause significant disruption in my family. While you were presenting, I'm looking at the current exchange that is out, and I don't want to dig too far into the results because the exchange is still open, but it's interesting to me. There is currently a difference analysis that's been done that has 110 people in one group that starred things in similar ways, 94 people in the other group around this particular issue. So a pretty even split, but it shows you a significant division around the group of 110 saying, hey, we should do this, good idea, and it's a lot of parents at that level. It didn't involve kids. And then the group of 94 with similar starring patterns saying, no, that's a terrible idea. I wouldn't like to see us do that. And one thing that we've certainly talked about a lot in this community over the years is if you're going to make a dramatic change to what you're doing, a lot of people should be behind that change, right? A vast majority. Doesn't mean 100%. We'll never have 100% of people agree to something, but something that impacts families so directly and their schedules and their routines and their entire, family life should be with the support of a lot of people. So I think we're really concerned about that division. The length of school day issue, the instructional impact of changing the length of our school day, something that actually over time we've tried to build the length of the school day to be as much time on task for kids as it can be, and cost. And I think that's a huge one. In years past, we've talked about the cost of changing the start time equating to nearly 1% on the tax levy. And for the people who have followed our budget conversation previous years, but even into this year, that 1% on the levy with a tax cap that is already, that in the 2 to 3 range at the most, right? 1% being eaten up by this, you're really talking about no way to do it without going over the cap, without massively cutting program. And these are kind of like subjective summaries of, we could show you an analysis and go through that, but the reality is that giant investment would likely be an over-the-cap investment, which has not been supported in our community the last time that we approached that, and would have to then come at the expense of lots of other programs. So the question really becomes, too, what would you give up then to be able to do this? And it would be a long, long list of giving things up. It's not a simple change to make. And then the last bullet, respectfully, I say, and I mean this respectfully to those that are asking the question, can we as a community handle some short-term inconveniences? Short-term's a subjective analysis of that, because that's not short-term for many people. That's a long-term inconvenience for people. Frustrations. Well, I wouldn't chalk other people's genuine concern for it up to just a frustration. And I say that respectfully. I understand where people are coming from. Somebody's genuine concern over that is beyond just a frustration. They have a genuine concern. And costs to end the harm, but costs being dramatic, right? That's a huge dollar amount. That's not just we're talking about, okay, we might have to trim around the edges and be a little bit more careful. We saw our transportation go up this year $1 million just based on additional runs, cost increase to fuel, et cetera. This is not the time with a driver shortage and everything else that goes into that for us to dramatically change the cost in transportation. We've already seen that. And then the concept of to end the harm, visible or not. I would suggest that that is somewhat subjective. There's evidence to suggest, yes, scientifically, again, not arguing with that it would be better perhaps to move to different start times. That does not mean that children right now or for the past, 5 decades have been harmed, right? Could they benefit from change? That's different from them being harmed, aggressively, assertively harmed by a particular strategy. So again, not to engage in the debate without people here who have voiced that concern, because we really do respect this. And if we could have done it and looked at it differently, and in fact changed the times at the secondary level without a dramatic change to the times at the primary level, it's a little bit of a different conversation. That's just also not plausible, right? Because you're talking about, in our scenario, having to have kids at the primary level get on the bus awfully early in the dark, really big shifts for elementary families, which were not favorable. And by the way, in the other district that did it, greeted with a lot of frustration. I guess I'm using the term too, but a lot of concern in that community that was expressed, pretty significantly for a long period of time. So, I'm inclined to say to the board at this time, we've spent a lot of time and energy, rightfully so, looking at this and in response to the community over time, looking at this issue. I think if there are any variables that change significantly over the next several years, we should re-examine it. We should be open to it, for sure. And those variables would have to be a dramatic change in resources that are available, or that the cost somehow goes down significantly, and we can always keep an eye on that. But unless those variables change, I would suggest that at this point, we schedule this for another review in 5 years. We'd be open to the concept, again, if variables change, but that we look at a 5-year time frame before we review this again, because the conversation continues to happen, and there should be rigorous debate in the community. But as far as the resources that are going into reviewing this, and it has been reviewed so thoroughly by Lou and his team in the committee, I would suggest the next time to dig into it at that depth should be 5 years from now, again, unless a variable changes, and that would give it the right space. And I would remind people that we did a very similar approach strategically and organizationally to the review of kindergarten over periods of time, where it came up as an issue in the community. We reviewed our ability to do it, and when we didn't do it, it was because of cost, it was because of community sentiment, it was because of the variables, very similar actually to this. And at different intervals of time, we said we would come back and review it again, ultimately resulting in us at full-day kindergarten. When the time was right, when the cost could be managed, and when it was supported in a different way in the community over a period of time. So I'm curious to hear any feedback that you might have, but that would be our recommendation at this point, that we accept the work and thank you, but that we also look to review this again 5 years from now.
Probably ask Julene or Sue to comment first, because you were both on the committee.
Sue and I both sat on the committee, and I really, Kevin, you said everything just perfectly. There's no point in me repeating what you just said, but we do not have strong support from the community. And as we learned when we looked at Brookside School, rather than Council Rock School, if we don't have that support, we will not have support in our budget. And if we don't have support in our budget, then there are many, many things that will have to be eliminated. And having to go, if a budget fails and we have to go to an austerity budget, that has a significant impact for a very long time. And so because I don't see the overwhelming support in the community, and not only that, but I see deep concern from parents of very young children, and on the committee level, there was not a lot of representation from people who are currently at Council Rock or whose children haven't begun at Council Rock. But the people that I've talked to individually, anecdotally, were horrified at the idea of putting their little ones out at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I at this point, can't support a change. Sue?
Well, I was going to say, again, we discussed the science, and the science is definitely there to support, the shifting circadian rhythms of adolescence. And so I sort of off the record spoke to some pediatricians in the community about their feelings about this. And it is difficult for one district to make a change at a time. And so a lot of pediatricians get asked occasionally from parents about what are your recommendations for start times. And the doctors I spoke with had said that this might be a situation where there should be group advocacy in Albany about having whole communities say, this is going to be what we roll out. We're going to roll out a change in school start times, and there might be funding then associated with that for the districts then to get that implemented. And that helps sports teams meet up at the same time. It helps childcare in a community shift altogether. And so, there's room to advocate, but at an individual district level, it's very difficult. And we've talked about the costs because we'd be funding it all on our own. And it's just an exponential increase in funding. And again, the community is split. And so I agree, I don't feel it's feasible at this point, despite the evidence being there.
Sue, you bring up a really good point that I'm going to bring to Legislative Committee in the fall when we resume, that this really is an issue that's bigger than us. We're looking at individual school districts to try to make this change that we know universally will be good for our adolescents. And as the landscape in Albany is changing around foundation aid, and as we're moving towards full funding, we know that we have issues with transportation that we're educating our legislators about, and this needs to be something that we add to the docket in terms of moving the whole state to making this change, but having Albany understand that we can't do that without help with transportation, that we don't currently have. I mean, the cost to this is insurmountable as far as I'm concerned, in terms of either, we understand from the community that going over the tax cap is an equity issue, right, that we don't have support for. And that I can't wrap my head around the idea of cutting programs that are also important to students' mental health and development in order to accomplish this one thing. So I'm fully on board with reevaluating in 5 years, but then also trying to work with folks in Albany to understand how this change could affect students across the entire state.
Other comments?
So we would plan internally to review again in 5 years. We'll keep you updated on that, and if any other variables change in between, we'll certainly keep you posted. And we have these conversations every year in terms of the blueprint as well. But just generally loosely, it's not like a mandate. We would expect in 5 years to go back and have another conversation. So, thank you. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our goals and objectives for the year are up on the screen there, and as I flip through the slides, I think you will see a theme throughout all of them, connecting between relationships, partnerships, and connections, whether that's between us in the community, between staff members, our families, and our students as well. I'm going to highlight some of many of these pieces. We've talked about different updates throughout the year here at board meetings. I want to highlight some of the changes since our last update, and we really kind of filtered this year in terms of, I'll use the phrase buckets: restorative discipline, restorative practices, social emotional learning, which you often hear people say SEL. In terms of mental health and wellness, while I'm reviewing some of the focus and pieces that we worked on this year, by no means, I'm going to steal Allison's words from earlier in the presentation, is our work done. This is where we began, especially as we thought about a return back from COVID. But I don't think I can open up an email, I can open up an educational journal, you can turn on the news, where you don't hear the reference to students' mental health and wellness, to individuals' mental health and wellness being a continual concern and an area to address. So again, I can't repeat enough, our work isn't done. We've scratched the surface, and it's exciting to think about what we have done and where we might be headed next and how we can dig into this even deeper as a school district. I'm really proud of the work, and I'm going to take the word partnership, the work that we've done together among our buildings, again, community, staff member, but also my partnership with Betsy Paddock, the assistant principal at TCMS, who helped create a lot of the partnerships that you're going to hear about in the next couple of slides. So I couldn't stand up here without giving her credit for her time, her effort, while leading some of this work and being assistant principal at the same time. So to Betsy, if you're watching, thank you very, very much. So a highlight, as we began our school year, focused on reestablishing relationships, reestablishing connections with our students. Using a lot of the good strategies that teachers do, the priority was connect with your students who are coming back to in person. Some of those students who had been remote and not been in person for quite some time. So priority was on establishing relationships. If we look back to all the way to last summer, this past summer for new teacher induction, we introduced a review of restorative practices, social emotional learning, and our goals as a school district to all of our new hires, to all of our new staff members. That was something new that we had not had a part of new teacher induction, but we'll continue to make sure that that's a part of our plans moving forward. So we're really proud of that. Administrators and mental health staff participated in restorative discipline training, and we were able to create some tip sheets to teachers for quick pull out when you needed it in the moment, and it was there in front of you. So we also had wanting to reestablish the common nomenclature across our classrooms and across our buildings, and then also sharing that with our families too, so that the same terms were being used in our classrooms, our schools, and in our homes. We also, after the fall, when we, Superintendent's Conference Day, there was an opportunity for teachers to be re-engaged with the process of restorative practices and circles and community building circles, but we listened to our staff. As our staff said, we need more, we want more, and we can do more. And this past April, we were able to have, working with Puri, to have even a further, more differentiated training for teachers if they chose to participate around academic circles, and really going beyond just your typical community building in the morning or the end of your class session, but really digging into students having circles about the academic tasks they're a part of. So we're excited about that people participated in April and continuing to move that forward. We also started to look at this work in terms of the lens of where do the paths overlap with culturally responsive practice. In many cases, SEL is the foundation of that work, and vice versa. They are one and the same, but where do they go off in a different direction, and our alignment with our school-based equity teams also. And where actually, when we might step back and say, didn't we hear this in the same meeting before? Yes, and that's important, and it's because it's the common shared work and goal that we're doing as a school district. When we look again into social emotional learning, we adopted some more units at the K level to be used, not only because of the introduction of full day K, but we knew that we needed to strengthen some of the tier 1 supports through our second step instruction, and wanting to make sure that that was in place in all of our kindergarten classrooms. Really proud of our partnership with Bavona Child Advocacy Center. We're really proud of the work that's going to continue next year, train the trainer opportunities, and differentiating our lessons across all of our buildings. There's going to be some more direct instruction opportunities at grade 9 through 12, but then how we also rolled that out to our 3 through 8 classrooms and to our families. There were PTSA meetings with the principal that included Bavona, where we shared the lessons with the community, with our parents, so they knew the topics, they knew the language, they knew the theses that were going to be shared. And then also, in addition to that, staff meeting time set aside to really for staff who are going to deliver the lessons, sit in the classrooms, and be a part of that learning. So we're really proud of that fact and that work that went on this past school year, and looking forward to it continuing next year as well. Again, in the area of social emotional learning, Allison talked about Panorama, and one of our tasks this year was to take a look at identifying a social emotional screening tool. And not only were we going to look at Panorama for our culture climate survey, but we're also able to use it again for our social emotional screener as well. How are our kids feeling about how they're doing in school? Where are they? And what do we need to do to shift around mental health supports to support them in their classrooms? We did that in the spring. Parents, staff, and students were all administered the survey, and we are looking forward to the opportunity of next year to be able to compare data again when we administer in the fall, and then subsequently again in April, and we'll have some comparative data to look across. Next week, in fact, our mental health team is going to be looking at some of this data and working with Panorama really through the lens of the mental health provider. Many of our mental health providers also sit on our school-based equity teams. They will have that opportunity, as Allison spoke before, to look into that data as well in terms of the lens of that culture climate survey end of it. So more data to come, and more review of that's going to begin ASAP. Our district wellness committee. Betsy worked very closely with this committee and really trying to get more resources in the hands not only of staff, but most importantly to our parents, and really taking a look at reinvigorating what was termed as a parent university. And Betsy has been sharing both in that committee, but also with our mental health team meeting last week, where development of what we're calling Bruin Talks, very similar to, I'm looking, Julian, because I know that you sit on the committee, so Bruin Talks, very similar to TED Talks, where addressing some of the topics that you see there below, student wellness, conflict resolution. These are just examples of some topics, but we know that these are things that our parents have asked for. What can we look at home? What can we do? The Wellness Suite was enriched again this year, not only with these resources, but other resources for family and also for staff to take care of their own wellness. And to have things at their fingertips as well, not only for themselves, but for their colleagues. Who's going to do some of this work? Well, we're really proud of the fact, in fact, at the district mental health team meeting last week, people expressed their gratitude and support from the district for the addition of some staff, which included 2 counselors, one at Council Rock and one at French Road. That gave us the opportunity to realign the family navigator position to support our students at grades 6 through 12. And we're really excited for the opportunity to begin a partnership with Giles in the fall. And this is described here on this next slide, where we will have a clinic opportunity available to our 6 through 12 students, for students where access to community-based services may be a hindrance, or there are other pieces that get in the way, that we need to support our families and our students in a different way than might be typically provided in other means or other venues. What's really exciting about this partnership is that it's a student-focused consultation. So actually, staff will be a part of our mental health team meetings. We'll meet with small groups of teams supporting students, boots on the ground right with us in terms of that consultation. But what's also exciting is that it's not just for 6 or 12, that consultation, the professional development end of it. That will be available for all of our mental health staff, K through 12, including the opportunity for parents and community members to participate in some parent event nights. So more to come, more to be done. As again, I said before, it is just the beginning. But it's been exciting and very, very, very important work, and I'm very proud to be a part of that as we look ahead. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deanna. And just a general thank you to Allison, Lou, and Deanna for that update. We often talk about the blueprint sort of as what we do and who we are and how we set our priorities. So appreciate the time you took in this update, and we've got a meeting coming up to do a blueprint. Just get an update from the community. You want to address that for us?
Sure. Tuesday, June 28th is our Blueprint Day with community members, stakeholder groups, representatives from throughout the district, community members, staff members, the Board of Education, our leadership team, to really dig into the what's should we do about it, and not necessarily how and why, which is action planning done later in the summer. Excuse me. And we'll base a lot of that work on thought exchange feedback. Please go into the thought exchange. That remains open right now. And volunteers who would like to participate will be notified by the end of the week of their selection. Thanks.
Yeah. Illustrative of the fact, I think, that it's a living document. It evolves as we continue to get feedback and learn more and continuously improve. So
Yes,
thank you.
now that I'm not joking, I'll say this. You're probably grateful
Again,
that
I
he
was
was
just
joking, he'll stop.
Filling. Like,
Thanks for stretching that. I think what's important to recognize in terms of process is every year we take these summaries and then we sit back down with feedback from the community and representatives from the community to say, okay, what is it that we should do about it? And that becomes the backbone of all of our work and on all of our committees and in our budget process as well. So it's really a connected strategic plan for the district that evolves each year, and we appreciate people providing the feedback and participating in that. And I would just say again, the exchange, I know people excuse me, are overwhelmed and they have a lot on their plate, but we really, really do value the feedback, and we go through every single comment that is offered. The good, the bad, the ugly. It is not just intended to be, though, what's wrong or what doesn't work. We want that too, absolutely. But we want to know also what is working for people so we can do more of that. So for the so many people that come up to us with, nothing but positive and it's great, tell us that too so we can use that data as well. That's really helpful. So thank you.
all right, now on to a series of reports. I know that in some cases our Monroe County School Board meetings have stopped, but we'll start with financial reports. You all have received before this meeting the financial reports from Lou and his team. Are there any questions in regards to those reports?
No.
Okay, I will ask for a motion to approve the financial reports as presented in tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second?
seconded by Sue. All those in favor?
Aye.
As mentioned in the beginning, Lila is at her track and field banquet, and Eliza Gahouse is nursing some asymptomatic COVID symptoms, so we will not get a student update tonight. Board of Education, I'll just quickly go around the room. Labor Relations, our last meeting was April 27th, where we did discuss a number of different issues with regards to healthcare and coming trends. Information exchange, any updates there?
No?
No?
We're done.
That's what I thought. Legislative?
Concluded in May.
That's what I thought. Okay. We do have a BOCES update, but what I'm going to do is I'll start with other board member reports. Christina, I'll start with you and work this way for any updates, because that'll give me a minute to pull up Mark's report from BOCES.
Okay, yeah. The New York State School Board Association's DEI committee is actually meeting once in the summer. In person in Albany, we have not met since we started, so. So I'll be able to meet with all the areas in New York State, which will be really interesting, and New York City.
That's great.
I was not able to attend the final curriculum council meeting, but
Okay.
I did, and we reported on that at our last meeting.
Okay.
So we are all set for that. I was able to attend the school-based equity team all-district meeting to witness the student panel, and it was incredibly moving and informative. And also tonight was our final audit committee meeting of the year. It was Christina, Larry, and I with Lou and Dahlia Watts. We met with 2 of our outside independent auditors. That's an incredibly important part of the audit committee is listening to the findings from the independent auditors. I think it's important that the community understand that we're not just looking at the documents, the financial documents, and saying, okay, that we work with professionals to understand if our policies and procedures are compliant, if they're working for the district, what our risks are. And what they confirm for us pretty much every time is that Lou and Dahlia and their team are incredible stewards of the district's resources. And it's always good to hear that we are managing the inherent risks of dealing with a large budget incredibly well. So thanks to all.
Thank you.
We had gone over it when Lou was presenting, but just the school start time committee, and something I probably didn't say before, but just thanks to the committee, it was a lot of hard work, and there was a lot of parent, out of meeting time that they put into researching and really looking at this issue, which is important, and so just thank you for that committee. They did a good job.
Thank you for pointing that out.
I have none other than to say it has really truly been an honor and a privilege to work with everyone around this table. I will miss you, truly miss you all. And I've loved my work, and I look forward to having more board members love their work as much as I have. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the community for electing me for the past 12 years.
Congratulations on an outstanding tenure.
Thank you.
And thank you, Andrea, for your service and for your friendship as well.
Thanks, Andrea.
You won't be a stranger.
No, I won't.
Oh, no, I know where to find her.
People should know in the community, though, you transitioned right from being PTSA president
Yes.
to sitting in this room. So thank you for all that you've given as a parent volunteer, and we've watched your children through that time grow and becoming the outstanding humans they are too. It's been just an honor. So,
And when you miss them, you can call school and
I
still hear
can
your
hear
son's
You
voice.
can still hear Ben's voice in the voice.
You were my first PTSA president.
Yep. I remember you.
Yep.
Mine too.
Deanna covered wellness, and the only other thing I have to report, and Sue covered a start time committee, was that I attended the Monroe County School Board annual meeting and dinner a couple of weeks ago, and it was a farewell to Sherry Johnson, who has stewarded that organization for, I think about maybe 8 years.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, but she's been there for longer, and she's retiring, and Amy Thomas will be taking over as the executive director of Monroe County School Boards, I think probably July 1st.
Outstanding. I'll just quickly give a couple of snippets from Mark Kokanovich's BOCES update. The Monroe One BOCES Board of Ed has been attending many year-end graduations and award ceremonies, attending 5 to this point, with 5 remaining over the next 2 weeks. We note this all the time. What is provided at BOCES is diverse and addresses a need for a lot of young people. The BOCES board toured the new cosmetology and culinary facilities with construction nearing completion on the main Fairport campus. The new and expanded facilities will allow for additional students to be accommodated in these very popular and growing programs within the Eastern Monroe Career Center, or EMCC. Also, EMCC recently had 194 students accepted into the National Technical Honor Society, the highest number in BOCES history. Some more information with regards to updating some manuals, and they're also working on evaluations for the BOCES District Superintendent, Dan White. Kevin, you asked if Mark had gotten any sort of cosmetology or like facelift when he was there. I don't know the answer to that question, so
Thank you.
check with him
Thank you.
next time we talk with him.
I'd love to see the new facility, though. A few years ago, we took a tour as a board, and we've had several new board members since. I think that's something we should look into, because it's important for the community, for us to be able to let the community know what an incredible resource that is and what kind of work they do
And
there.
our students have those options.
Yeah, and we have kids over there, so you're absolutely right. It's a great suggestion. We'll plan on that for the fall.
Yeah, we can plan on it. We'll go when Mark is scheduled, the hair and mustache trim.
Definitely.
For sure.
Definitely.
Good idea. I'm just kidding, there's no hair and mustache.
You
Should
don't know
probably
that.
be very
You don't
clear.
know that.
Well, I don't know about there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he gets it done somewhere.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for, we talk about this all the time.
Focus,
I think, 23 different subcommittees, task force, curriculum reviews that we're all spread out on, so thank you all for the time you devoted to that. Next up, Nicole, BTA.
Great.
Great, thank you, and thank you as always for the opportunity to share what we're doing. I didn't get quite as many submissions this time, so you can breathe a sigh of relief. And hopefully that format is nice and easy and user-friendly. So the first one's just the Adopt a Highway, which the BTA did with Clean Sweep. Next, I'll go through Council Rock. We had a wonderful Eric Carl, many different kindergarten teachers picked an author study, and Mrs. Kennyworth and Mrs. Glanville did Eric Carl, and if you walk in that little corner, you are surrounded by Eric Carl, so it's really nice. The author visit, I'm pretty sure that's probably been covered quite a few times, but just more, a really special part of it was we had a book birthday. So Jardine Nolan was publishing a book, and all of the PTSA was able to provide each classroom with a brand new copy of the book and birthday hats, and it was unicorn hats. It was really wonderful to have that gift, and thank you to the PTSA for that. Frez, Mrs. Harp's 3rd and 4th grade classes are making robots, and I think probably right about now they're adding motors and sensors, and from a grant that Mrs. Harp was able to obtain, and she's going to be presenting some of the work that they did at a conference in June, so that'll be nice. Frez Music, my goodness, I'm sure Miranda's pretty tired from all of the different chorus nights, but they had assemblies. I think they had something like 5 or 6 different assemblies with the red band and the blue band. They performed at Frontier Field. They did the march through Meadowbrook neighborhood, and then they were able to have their final performances. And what's really great is the picture from last year. And then the picture from this year of the kids performing, so just performing virtually last year, very separated. It was really great. The Red Wings game is there. They sold over 1,000 tickets for that, so that was really great. And Solo Festival, 17 students from Frez participated in Solo Fest. They've been doing outdoor lessons, so that's pretty wonderful. We'll move on to TCMS. In Mrs. Katsatos' class, they were able to have a Zoom with Mary Jo Lamphere, who's the town historian for the town of Brighton. So they really enjoyed that. And then you're going to see a theme of sugar. There's a lot of maple syrup in a lot of different shares here. So math lab students in grades 7 and 8 visited Jeff Reichman's property. He has a maple tree farm and beehives, and they got to learn about that process and to really think about the math that was involved. They had ice cream topped with maple syrup, so keep that maple syrup in your mind. The next page is all of the students who participated in Solo Fest from 12 Corners, and the band, chorus, and orchestra is really extraordinary. The jazz band performed at the Lilac Festival, which was really wonderful. And then they had all of their concerts last week. Then here's where the maple syrup comes back. The German students went to Stowe, Vermont to go on their 8th grade German trip, and they were able to go to the the Trapp Lodge in Stowe, where they were able to speak German, visit the Trapp Maple Sugar Shack, see the production, go to a chocolate factory and a teddy bear factory, and then had a bonfire with unlimited s'mores. They wanted to make sure to add that the students represented TCMS very well. Katie Kantz and Katie Falter, they have a social studies and English PowerPoint, so if you are able to open that, they do such wonderful things together. And then a really wonderful shout out from Eileen Kerr for Victoria Mazzetti, who is the school psychologist at 12 Corners, and just the extraordinary job she does. We'll move on to TCMS and BHS, so back to the maple sugar. The French classes participated in Music Mania, which is a March Madness for French music. So really interesting read there. And then the French 8 students went to Quebec, where they attended many different things, theater workshop, they went to Parliament, they visited the city, they made maple butter, learned all things maple at a sugar shack, and then were able to work that off by going on a great hike. And then their culminating project, which was last week, was to make crepes. So, and the food being continues. Functional skills classes went to Rita's Italian Ice, and they were working there last week. They had a shift there. They were really excited to have that and to be able to do an internship opportunity that will present itself. They also were able to take a tour, able to cook at the kitchen. They have trips coming up, Seneca Park Zoo, Fish Hatchery, Powder Mill Park, Charlotte, Bill Gray's, Abbott's. And then they're also planting a garden, and they're researching what kind of plants to use, what will go well, and they're gonna be planting, actually, they planted yesterday, or they're planting this week, so if you can go check it out, it's outside of door 24. High school, so that would be great. They also, students who were interested went to Careers in Construction Day, which was hosted by the Rochester Builders Exchange. They were able to walk through a site, attended a job fair, and then actually got to meet the Rochester Mayor, Malik Evans. So that was great. The counseling updates was Senior Decision Day. I know that's been shared a lot, but that was really exciting. And they said, I think they say this every time, it was the best decision day yet, but I think that's pretty awesome. Trapezoid won first place from the American Scholastic Press Association. That's from Molly Healy. And then back at the beginning of May, the East sports team, I actually don't know how they've done since then, but they qualified for a national competition. I don't know what the results were. And only 8 teams in the country made it. So wonderful shout out for Laura Byrne and Travis Figuera. And that's it.
Yeah, I just want to point out that Trapezoid Award is a national award.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that would be as Dr. Healy is retiring. And the advisor to that. So it'll be a tough act to follow next year, but really excited for Mr. Rogenmoser to take over that. But that's an unbelievable publication that some other publications could certainly, no pun intended, take a page out of and learn a lot. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter?
Okay, the PTSA health report here. At the Senior Awards ceremony, the PTSA was once again honored to present our $400 scholarship to a student who is going into the field of education. This year's winner was Emma Buck. Emma will be studying at SUNY Geneseo next year. While at Brighton, she played field hockey, was on Link Crew, Natural Helpers, and the Future Teachers Club. We're so happy to see the class of 2022 lawn signs posted all over the neighborhood, including my own lawn.
Mine too.
Sponsored by the Nancy Buck Memorial Fund. End of year celebrations are well underway at all schools. Events like field days, ice cream socials, TCMS bonfire, and much more once again will return this year. We are looking for more volunteers next year. If you're interested, please reach out. We can talk to you about how you can become more involved. And our final meeting will be June 15th at 9:30 a.m. on Zoom due to all rooms being used for the Regents exams. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pete. Dr. McGowan?
I have nothing else to report other than to simply say we're excited for graduation. Families will receive communication from Dr. Hall and I this week about planning in terms of weather. We know it's going to be beautiful out, but in the event that our knowledge is not accurate, we will have a couple of plans, and they generally revolve around the idea that we will have to move the graduation to whatever window we can find that it is nice out. We do have a rain date, of course, for Wednesday, but we would potentially need the flexibility for people to look at a different time during either one of the 2 days. The weather this year has certainly shown us that you could have a beautiful 2 hours and then a not so beautiful 2 hours. So we would like people to be open to that and make sure that they're aware of that. We'll communicate that clearly this week. working with the video production company actually to make sure that they'll have staff available at different times, so we can be clear about that with folks. But, the year is ending up, a lot of great activities. Staff are really knocking themselves out to make it fun for kids as we finish up the year. And it's just really so enjoyable to watch them do the things that they had done previously for so many years and enjoy every moment of that and live their best lives each day, which they're entitled to. It's very exciting. So, thanks.
Thank you. Lou, update on the Smart Schools Bond Act.
Thank you. So tonight I'm going to give a presentation on the Smart Schools Bond Act, talking about how we've utilized the funds and setting the stage for a new phase 2, if you will, project plan. So just quickly, what is the Smart Schools Bond Act? It's essentially a state entitlement grant that was passed in 2014, where the state issues that and then provides allocations to different school districts across New York State. Given the timing of that, that's right when we were in the Brookside development. We were talking about full-day kindergarten. So the Board of Education at that time earmarked 100% of the Smart Schools allocation for Brighton towards the capital projects. So that's why we haven't really talked about it. That the intent was to utilize that for the development of Brookside and/or Council Rock. So we did that, and these are the allowable uses. So we, during the Brookside development and the Council Rock, we were looking at school connectivity, the expansion of the new wing, technology. All of these areas fit within what we were trying to develop at either Brookside or Council Rock. So again, the plan was to allocate all of the funds to there. As it turned out, what was eligible for and what we were able to claim, so the initial allocation was just over $1 million. The phase 1 claim that we earmarked for Council Rock within the allowable eligible categories turned out to be $588,000. So that's a claim drawdown, if you will, of the grant in that amount. So that leaves a remaining project balance of $489,994. So within that, and going back to the allowable uses, what we want to set the stage tonight for is the development of a project plan focusing on high-tech security and install high-tech security features in school buildings and on school campuses. So within that eligible, within the category, these are the eligible expenses. And what we're looking at and what we're beginning to design project plans for are enhancement in our surveillance cameras. As technology has evolved, security cameras with software and licensing have the ability now and have the technology to be more preventative controls. The analytics that were within the software can provide more of a detection as opposed to how they're currently being used as an investigative tool, or in the event of emergency, we can turn those over to the first responders. But we have opportunities to make that a preventative measure going forward. Cabling and wiring and with IP public address and microphone, there's project opportunities with that we've been working with Relcom and vetting some of the opportunities to enhance our school safety through our communication systems. And then on the right-hand side, the entry control systems, lockdown and panic buttons, software and licenses for entry control equipment, and then installation of entry control equipment. So these are within the eligible expenses, again, where we've been focusing some time and effort prior to the recent tragedies, things we were already thinking about developing some project plans for and trying to utilize that remaining allocation. So further vetting these and talking with our safety committee and our district administrators, we identified the project priorities to really focus on our multi-activation announcements. And this is a graphic from a corporate partner of ours, not our work. So you can see some of it is advertising, but it gives a good picture of what we might be trying to achieve in an upcoming project. So the multi-activation announcements, again, the all calls using horns and speakers to make sure that everyone knows whenever a building status is changed from active ongoing to shelter in place, for instance, or lockdown, and then the emergency notifications that come with that. So within that, and the most immediate project opportunity is to expand on the existing infrastructure that we already have within the district, and that's our My Telephone system. We have an opportunity to utilize that software in different mediums to be able to call a building status. So using a mobile application, using our phone system, using a computer system, and we're also expanding beyond this picture to upgrade our radio devices, going from an analog system to a digital system. So at any point in time, a supervisor or a site supervisor can call an emergency procedure through the network and utilizing some of the public horns and strobes so that in areas of high occupancy, everyone knows what's happening. They can be communicated with real time. It goes far beyond just the PA system in communicating a building status. So we're looking at and building a project plan to utilize all of this technology both inside of our schools and the exterior of our schools. If we think about our campus and the activity that's on our campus at any time during the day, whether it's walkers on the track, whether it's after school practices, whether it's flex hour, to be able to ensure that everyone knows what's happening at any moment is of critical importance. So this is a solution diagram from, again, one of our potential vendors, Valcom. A second area that I've asked the superintendent to begin to explore is a weapons detection or weapons concealment detection system. This is something that we saw a demo of. It's what's happening in many arenas of high occupancy. It's the next generation of metal detectors in that people would be walking through and the analytics within the software would be looking for the density of metals for weapons concealment. And it would detect something and it would provide a verification and again allow us to use our emergency communication system. We still have a lot of vetting to do on this. I've simply asked the superintendent for permission to explore this with our safety committee and with our school communities. But it's something that I believe we have the responsibility to explore given the recent tragedies. And again, it's just another enhancement with our emergency communication systems and immediate detection. So with that, these are the stakeholder engagements requirements, and this is the purpose of tonight's presentation, is to begin to set the stage for the development of a project plan, and you can see what the requirements are. We have to develop a preliminary plan to be approved by the Board of Education, would be posted and vetted by the community over a period of time. There'd be a public hearing, and then we would submit a project plan to the State Education Department after, again, fully vetting and developing a project. The level of detail that's required by the state in developing the budget has to be well vetted. When we did the Council Rec project, we needed linear feet of cable. It's got to be a very specific project plan that we would present to our community, and then we would consider all the feedback that would be through the public participation process. So tonight I simply wanted to introduce it, give the Board of Education a heads up that that's something we're developing, and we'll expect to have more plan details in the coming months.
Thank you.
Any questions for Lou? I'll make a quick comment, Lou, and that is, I appreciate you bringing this forward and doing some of the initial research. Every discussion about security in schools will be a little bit uncomfortable. The world we live in is continuing to change, and we have to think differently about things. I believe we're being very transparent and saying we're going to look at this and see what makes sense and what doesn't. And as we always do, we'll share a ton of information with the community about what this might look like, what we think are the benefits, what we think are the potential drawbacks. But I think if anybody, whether it be a parent or just anybody in the community, is completely comfortable with all these discussions, they may not be understanding it correctly. We've got to get a little uncomfortable looking at what could possibly happen and what could we potentially do to prevent it, but also not infringe on somebody's rights. And that's just going to be an everyday struggle. So I appreciate us being willing to look at it and talk about it, but as part of that, we really ought to expect to be uncomfortable at times and sort of be okay with that. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, you took the words out of my mouth. I think you articulated that very well. I just, one, appreciate Lou being so on top of this and treating every child in this district as if they are his own and taking that role so seriously. I know that Lou and John McCabe and everybody that Lou works with on these topics value that care, that perspective, that diligence at a very high level. And your willingness to dig into all of these, to challenge our thinking, to make us really confront some uncomfortable questions, all to protect the students and by the way, the staff that we are entrusted with as well by their families, I think is remarkable. And to the point specific to the weapon system, detection system, and the other conversations that are uncomfortable to have, they're so important to have. And we'll dig into it. We'll dig into it really deeply, engage the community in the conversation and the security committee, and really look at their expertise and perspective and then present those back to you for final decisions as well. But thank you.
It is a chance for us as adults to role model productive conflict, which means disagreements respectfully had, and maybe not everybody agrees with the final result with necessarily the same level of enthusiasm. So that's sometimes a difficult thing to do. Any other questions for Lou?
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have approval of a tentative labor agreement with the Brighton administrators, nurses, ASI, non-teaching supervisors, and non-unit support staff. We've had the chance to look at that. Is there anything you want to say about that?
No, just really productive conversations, positive dialogue, and a lot of collaboration to get to the right place with each of the groups that we're recommending to you within parameters that we set out to at the beginning, and really in line with conversations we've had at this table over the past year around making sure we're supporting people at the level that we ought to for the incredible work they're doing for our kids, recognizing both the labor market, the economic condition for our community members, but also for our staff, and doing the right thing by people because they are the best at what they do, and we want to support them in that. And so we're excited to be telling you that we've reached those agreements and ask you for your support in those tonight.
Questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Karen. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have a series of bids leveraging our cooperative arrangement within Monroe County BOCES for a number of different supplies for the year. I did receive an unsolicited rating from Lou regarding the ice cream and frozen desserts. He taste tested all of them, and they've all been met his approval.
Possible, sir.
Yes. But we do get a benefit from being part of Monroe County BOCES and are able to lever better prices for our community because of that. Questions with regards to any of those bids? It's a pretty diverse set of bids. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Andrea,
Second?
seconded by Esther. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of the second read policy. I missed the first read for the meeting that I did miss, but it's in regards to gender, and it has to do with updates regarding state code. Is there anything you want to say about that?
No, really just, it's interesting to me, something we mentioned last time is that the state law in these areas has caught up to what Brighton has been doing for a very long time, and then taken appropriate steps to require folks in their policy to use particular language that's thoughtful and respectful, and to make sure that we're doing right by kids and families. And really still comes down to, for us, as it has and will continue to, that we are allowing, cherishing, supporting every human being in being who they say they are, how they say they are, and when they say they are, and supporting them in that. And the state has certainly now, in terms of regulation law, caught up to that as well.
Questions in regards to this, the second read? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second?
seconded by Christina. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of a JUUL agreement between the Brighton Central School District and a particular employee. You all did receive an update from Dr. McGowan on that. The questions were asked. Is there anything else you feel you need to ask? Motion to approve the JUUL agreement as reviewed.
So moved.
Moved by Julene,
Second?
seconded by Susan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of a 2022 bond resolution in the amount of $4.8 million to finance a capital improvement project. Do we want to hit any of the projects that are under there? Is it worth, do we have it on here? I don't know if we do. This has to do with a number of things. Lou, what are the highlights for this one?
The gym, yeah?
Each one.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
So this relates to the scope that was on the docket for the May 22. So these are the gymnasium renovations, this is the French Road Playground. This would be the bonding authorization that we would marry up with the building aid. So French Road, cooling tower, the playground, French Road Gymnasium is included in that. The high school gymnasium renovations, there was the lower auditorium roof work was included in that.
Does this include some of the light work around the field?
Nope, that's this year's project.
Got it.
So that one, we've already passed the bond resolution for, we just issued the short-term debt for that. This is for next year's scope.
Okay.
And boilers at the middle school was another big part of that scope.
Great. Thank you for that review, appreciate it. Questions in regards to that? I will note, and this will come up on Lou's safety committee, that in a number of these situations, when buildings are being worked on over the next 12 to 18 months, the community might lose use of the track for a couple of days or a couple of the playgrounds. It presented some safety situations for us when it was ongoing at Council Rock. We'll have signage up and things like that. But you might hear from the community if they find out, for example, when the lights are being fixed, that the track is unavailable for a few days because of the existence of a crane or something. So it's all about improving the facilities, or in some cases, repairing. Motion to approve that bond resolution.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second?
seconded by Andrea. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up for our consent agenda, we have the personnel.
We have two, item 15 and 16 on the bottom.
Reserve fund.
Reserve fund.
The reserve fund and then the construction award recommendations.
I've got it.
I don't have it, must be in the wrong
No,
one.
no,
I have
I didn't take the I didn't take the amended. I'm sorry about that, Kim. Thank you.
You're fine.
Yeah, I was-
Hold, please. Thank you. Okay, so approval, this is new item 15. I have the older one, I apologize. Approval of the reserve fund modifications. We have had discussions with Lou in regards to that. Any additional questions?
No.
Motion to approve the reserve fund modifications.
So moved?
Moved by Andrea,
Second?
seconded by Esther. All those in favor?
Okay.
Next up, item 16 is approval of the construction award recommendations. These are the folks who are going to be doing the work, the low bidders basically, for these jobs that were described. Questions for Lou in regards to any of the work or the bid awards?
No.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Julene,
Second?
seconded by Christina. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again, Kim. Now we're on to the consent agenda. There are a series of personnel changes. I'll make, all of the people we bring on board are obviously very important, but I'll make note of the fact that there's two more important transitions there. Marin, who did a great job for us at French Road. Will take on the unenviable task of going back to work with Principal Matt Taffy.
As co-principal at Council Rock Park. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. She said no.
But we have two new leaders coming in for us, Dr. Tracy Glazer and Ms. LaShara Evans. Dr. Tracy Glazer is coming in to replace Mike Leaner, who's retiring, and Ms. LaShara Evans will be replacing Marin at French Road, and Shirley Flores will be moving over there here. Very excited, have had the chance to meet LaShara, not have a direct conversation with Tracy, but just very excited about those folks joining the leadership team, being able to work with them on Blueprint Day and some of the other planning events we've got coming up. All the people we bring on that are new are certainly important, but when we bring in a couple of leaders like that, it's particularly important.
Couldn't agree more. Very excited for our team, for our students, for our staff, and for all of you to have the opportunity to work with some really outstanding individuals. So,
approval of the personnel changes as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Susan,
Second?
seconded by Esther. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the Committee on Special Education report.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second?
seconded by Christina. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the Committee on Preschool Special Education report.
So moved.
Moved by Susan,
Second?
seconded by Andrea. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a list of fundraising activities. We are never We are never short of eating opportunities and getting our car cleaned opportunities and hearing some great musical performances opportunities. So that's great. A number of gifts. It's our practice to read these out loud because they are so important. A gift from Keith Miller and Susan Miller in the amount of $300 to the Dennis Miller Scholarship Fund for 2022 to the Visual and Performing Arts Department. A gift from Nancy Wolf Jordan in the amount of $100 to the Dennis Miller Scholarship Fund for 2022 to the Visual and Performing Arts Department. A gift from Christopher and Carlisle Miller in the amount of $200 to the Dennis Miller Scholarship Fund for 2022 to the Visual and Performing Arts Department. A gift from Susan Miller in the amount of $300 to the Dennis Miller Scholarship Fund for 2022 to the Visual and Performing Arts Department. Also a gift to Council Rock Primary School Library of a $100 gift card from Catherine Anderson in memory of Rachel Axelrod. And finally, a gift from Louis Beato, Rochester Area Community Foundation in the amount of $1,500 for the David L. Beato Memorial Scholarship Fund. I thought, I got it here. I will just quickly read in regards to the first 4 gifts. Just would remind everybody, and this is on the website, my thanks to Dr. Leaner and to Kim for this. The Dennis Miller Scholarship is awarded annually to one student who demonstrates a high level of interest and proficiency in the visual and/or performing arts. Students in grades 9 to 11 are encouraged to apply. This scholarship can be applied to a summer camp, performing or visual arts course, workshop, seminar, or other enrichment program. The $300 scholarship will be presented at the June awards ceremony. So those gifts you see there are to continue to replenish and bolster that fund for that. Questions with regards to the gifts? Approval of the overall consent agenda. Moved by Julene.
Second.
You know what, I'm gonna make Andrea second this one because this will be her final.
She can do the-
Oh, she's
Oh,
gonna-
she'll
she's
be
gonna-
adjournment, okay. I'm sorry, seconded by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Ian. And best wishes to all.
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Andrea,
Second.
seconded by Esther. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.